Welcome everyone to another RedwoodJS Town Hall. We're so glad that you're here. We have a jam-packed agenda today that I'm very excited to be sharing. It's going to be a good town hall, a lot of exciting news to share. So the first thing that I wanted to just announce, if you hadn't heard already, we are taking applications for the React server components working group. So there's the QR code. You can also use the URL there. This will take you to a Google form where you can fill out an application if you would like to help us behind the scenes, just testing different pieces of the code and writing React server components. We could really use your help and would appreciate the feedback as we continue to build. So the first thing that I'm going to do is let's pull up Dom, and he's going to talk about some of the latest releases and patches and minors that we've done since releasing V7. Hey, Dom.
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good.
Hear me okay and everything? Cool.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, we've been releasing tons of patches. I think since V7 has gone out, which has only been like a little over a week, we have close to 10 releases, mostly patches from 1 all the way to 7. So we just got a minor out earlier today. So that's our first minor off V7, and that has a couple cool features in it. One of them contributed by Orda, the end files flag. So Node has like a bit of a precedence for that, but we have our own CLI and we like to have a few more defaults. So we have the release notes out. It should be the latest one, just to check that out. Along with that is like a Prisma upgrade to 5.10 and an OpenTelemetry upgrade. But it's been really fun, just kind of like getting stuff merged, getting stuff out, and just seeing like fixes, and a lot of them are contributed by community members. We'll probably keep that going. We've been sharing release a lot more this major and on. Amy has been releasing like half the patches that came out, and we'll probably keep spreading it across the team. So that's something to look forward to. But yeah, a lot of it will be like I'm sure some more fixes will come in, but we'll probably have another RC for 7.2 starting like early next week. We've been getting more dependency upgrades in. So if we don't have like a major feature, it'll just be that, if anything. But we've been like seeing some ESM fixes kind of trickle out as well. The ones that were like kind of safe or non-breaking. We'll kind of like a lot of the work we're doing for RCs and SSR. We kind of do the work, and then when we realize some of it can be released like without affecting users, like we do that just to have more code out than kind of in main. Sometimes like that's not obvious to like after we've made some changes and like have it tested and all that and kind of see it afterward. But it feels better when we have like more parity that way. So some of those fixes like don't apply like directly, but just like for transparency there, you might see them mentioned like in the release notes from time to time. But yeah, like check out the minor that just came out. We've been like getting a lot of great feedback like on the forums, like when we release majors, just having the back and forth with the community helps us fix like a ton of issues. So we really appreciate like that, and just like definitely like stay engaged, and like don't like feel free to like bring anything up to us. Like we want to know, and we want to turn around and fix it. So thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. It's been fun to get on the release schedule and learn all the process. So I know most people don't see this side of Redwood, but I've just been so impressed with all the tooling that Dom's built to make that process go as smoothly as possible. So major kudos to you.
Yeah, thanks, Amy.
Yeah. Next up, we're going to pull up Josh. Josh has been working on a really fun project where he's migrating all of our internal tests from Jest over to Vitest. So thought it would be fun to bring Josh on to talk a little bit about that process.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. Yeah, so internally we have been doing a bit of work. ESM comes to mind, but other work also. And we found that configuring Jest to work properly, or just like we've been feeling a little bit of angst against Jest, even though it does work perfectly fine. But we decided to move towards Vitest, just to kind of align with a lot of the other things that we have been working on. So I'm going to pull up, if I know how to, just a quick example of, as soon as I agree to things on the screen, filling time. There we are. So hopefully that's kind of visible. This is just a typical example of the painlessness we've been experiencing when it comes to transitioning to Jest, from Jest to Vite. So it's really just been, fixing our dependencies, going from Jest to Vite, removing some old Jest legacy stuff. The Vitest commands are very similar. And then the biggest drawback for us, we've been very explicit. We no longer do Jest globals, so we don't assume that describe and expect and all that are just in the code. We explicitly import them. So the majority of the changes are that. You can see that, like, for most of this, it's just deliberately importing what we use, and that's pretty much the exact same across almost all of the packages we've transitioned to so far. I think we have something like 30 packages now using Vitest and like 10 or 12 left to do. So yeah, like it's just been kind of sharing some kind of good news that it's been pretty painless for us, and that we're hoping that once we've got some good knowledge about how we use it internally, that we can look to see how we can improve the user side of things with user-facing tests, like if we can transition users to Vitest and make that as painless as possible. But otherwise, I'll keep this short and sweet, Amy, and there we are.
Awesome. So just to confirm, this is what I heard you saying, is that if somebody is migrating from Jest to Vitest, a lot of the syntax is the same, so it's pretty seamless.
Yeah, I mean, all the typical functions you'll use are, and you can enable Vitest to do Jest to do globals. So it's pretty much, I mean, for kind of trivial tests and the general tests you'd write, it's pretty much drop in.
So what's the benefit there? Are you seeing a bump in the speed and how fast tests are running?
Well, sometimes we see, it often depends on the tests. Like sometimes people will just write tests that are kind of terrible, or like they'll just add a sleep for like 1 second. And you're like, well, the couple milliseconds that Vitest gave you didn't really make much difference there. But yeah, it's just been, especially when we work towards ESM and stuff, it's been a lot nicer than trying to configure crazy experimental flags and stuff.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Sweet. So as you guys know, we are working towards Bighorn, our next big epoch release, where we're going all in on React server components. And a big piece of that is obviously getting not only CSS support within the new code, but also Tailwind support. And so Danny is one of the lead maintainers that has been contributing towards that. So I'm going to share a brief demo. It'll be short just because he's showing that Tailwind is working, but it's kind of exciting to see some of those small victories. Well, what might look like a small victory, but it's really a big win for us. So I'm going to share his video.
Hey guys, very, very quick demo and explanation about what's happening with the RC builds so far. So over here, we have our test RC project. This is being rendered using server components. But now what we can do as of the latest PR being merged is that we can start using Tailwind to style things. In the past, we had to style everything with raw CSS like this or using CSS files. But just to demonstrate that it works, we can add some text. This text is styled with Tailwind. And we're going to give it the class name text to Excel. And let's make sure there's no way we can mix that Tailwind is working. So let's rebuild and serve. And this is on the About page. So once we refresh, we'll just wait for it to start up. Once you refresh, there we go. That's your styled Tailwind text. So to understand what's happened here, let's take a step back and try and understand what the build toolchain looks like. So the current stable versions of Redwood are only building client outputs. So this is the bundle that is used by the browser. So it takes your source code, builds it using Vite, and it has these bunch of plugins and configuration within Vite, And finally, it outputs the bundle that the browser can use. If you have the streaming experiment enabled, something really similar happens. But let's go to the RC bit and try and understand what was where it was before and where we are now. So when you have the RC experiment enabled, what we do effectively is we do two builds. We didn't used to do the server build here. We used to do a browser build specifically for RC. And this box here represents the extra plugins that you need for RC. But what used to happen is that we used to bypass all of the other plugins and configuration to generate the RC client build. And that's to keep it really simple to get our proof of concept working. The RC build for the server is a little bit separate from these other builds. But as of the latest changes, where we stand is we now have an integrated build where whether you're building for the browser or the server, it's using the same plugins that it always has for your stable Redwood builds. It adds on top some extra RC builds and will output 3 different bundles, more accurately, 3 different outputs that we will then run and serve to you.
Awesome. So exciting. Anytime you want to add some spinning text to your page, you can now do that with Tailwind. Next up, I'm going to pull Toby. So Toby has been just kind of leading a lot of the progress that we're making with Bighorn and React Server components, and wanted him to have the opportunity to share some of the updates that he's been working on.
Yeah, so I've been doing this mostly on my own for a while, but now we have the basic parts ready and we want to bring on more people to speed up the development. And in order to do that, I need to educate my team members on exactly how React Server components work, and especially in the context of Redwood. And one thing that I did was to create a simple, or not so simple, scaling draw diagram to show what's going on. So I want to share that with you as well. So let me share my screen. Oh, it's asking me to allow things. Hopefully I actually have to restart. Later, hopefully that works. And can I, yeah, let me show you the entire, no. Okay, yeah, nice. So yeah, this is the Excalibur screen or diagram. And here to the right is like a diagram of a regular web page, or yeah, Redwood React web page. At the top level, we have the router, like the Redwood router, with a routes file that you have in your project, with sets and pages and everything. A set has wrapper components. In this example, there's a table context and the layout. So this is rendered, this is blue, which means it's rendered on the client. So the router itself is rendered on the client so that you can use its page and navigation context and stuff like that, and also your own context. Like in this example, we have the table context. These contexts, they use the React hook use context, and that's a hook that is only available on the client side, so they have to be rendered by the browser or in a client browser context. But then we come to pages themselves, and we have decided that pages are by default server components, or like by default they are rendered on the server. And I've tried to make that clear by using orange for server components here. So we have the page, the example page here, it's a server component, and everything inside is also server components, all the way down here until we hit this table data cell success component, which is again blue because it's a client rendered component. And if we move over here to the left and look at the actual code, we can see why that is. Let's first look at the table data success component. It has use client at the top, which is a new directive that you use for React server components. So as soon as, like we try to keep it on the server as much as possible, but as soon as we hit a use client directive, we switch over to client-side rendering. And from that point onwards, everything that is imported, like here we import table row, which is shown here and here. Everything from here and onwards is now rendered by the client. So these are all now in the client context. Another thing that we can note here is that the cell is orange, which means it's a server component. We have had cells forever in Redwood. It was one of the, it's one of our unique features, but they have always been client-side rendered. That's everything has. But when we add support for React server components, we obviously wanted to make cells also server component compatible. Another thing that we wanted to do was to simplify data fetching, and we have gotten a lot of feedback that GraphQL might not be the optimal starting point. Like it's awesome and we still love it, but it can feel a bit complicated. So we want to simplify that piece. So with the introduction of React server component compatible cells, we have switched from a query to a GraphQL query to get your data, just have a simple data function that can be async and use direct database access or file system access, anything that you can do on the server side. In this example, I didn't want to specify exactly, so I'm just using this made up function get table data. But it's an async function that is called by the cell. So this cell is entirely rendered on the server. But down here, in the success component, we import this table data cell success and use that component. And as I said, it has use client. So when we hit that, we need to switch over to client-side rendering. So this is to the right here is how this page is rendered on your screen. And another way to visualize this is to have it more like a render tree, where at the top we have client components. Then for the page, as I said, we switch over to server-side rendering until we hit this table data success component that has the use client piece. And then we switch over to doing client-side rendering for this entire subtree. So as soon as you hit a use client directive, from that point onwards, you're always gonna be in a client context. Another interesting thing that you can see here is that this number component, we have it up here in orange and that means it's server rendered. It's also over here. We also have the number component being used inside the table display here in the table cell. But at this point, it's blue, it's client-side rendered. So this means a component can be both a server component and a client component at the same time, and we call these shared components. It entirely depends on what happened previously in the rendered tree, and we can see it also here. So the page is, as I said, always a server component or a render on the server. And for as long as we can, we're gonna try to keep rendering on the server. And in this part of the render tree, we get all the way to the number component. So everything here is rendered on the server. But on this side, on the left side here, we hit the use client directive in the data table cell success component. So anything below that one component has to be rendered on the client. So when we get down to number, it's now rendered on the client. one thing to note here is this special case that I've highlighted in or marked by with a green dash border here and in green over here, is that all the router stuff, so the internal Redwood code and also your code in your project, is rendered on the client. And then normally anything that's imported in a client component, as I said, will also be rendered by a client, but we wanted our pages to render on the server. So we have some special code that React has made available to us as a framework to use to switch from client-side rendering to server-side rendering. But this is something that we have hidden from users, so nothing that you have to care about. But when I bring the team up to speed on our implementation, this is something that's important to take note of. Yeah, I think that's it for this diagram, and I will make sure to share a link to this so you can all look at it. Copy link. Let's see if I can find StreamYard. And Amy, if you could please share that in the YouTube chat, that would be awesome, or someone else who has access to the StreamYard.
Yep, you're good. I just shared it.
Yeah, thanks. Awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So that was that for that part. I also want to share some code, if I can. Stop sharing that and then switch. Oh, yeah. Oh, nope. I tried to share my VS Code window, but apparently StreamYard is not allowed to. Let's see. Share screen. So going for the no. Okay, not gonna happen. Oh well. Doesn't basically what I wanted to show was our routes file, and what I want to show is very it's not much to show actually. It's just that it still looks exactly the same as it's always been. So I mentioned that we do some special handling behind the scenes with this new capability that React has given us to switch from client back to server, which is something that you're not supposed to be able to do. Previously, if you have played around with our implementation of React Server Components, you could see that we did some imports in the routes file that you had to manually add there. We have managed to do that automatically for you using our Babel plugins. So now and going forward, the routes file looks exactly as it always has looked, and that's our goal. We want to keep it as simple as possible to take an existing Redwood project and switch it over to our new to switch over to a Redwood project that can use the RSC features.
Very cool.
Thanks.
Do you want to share? I can share code, I think, on my end where the data pattern that you've been working on with the cell.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, let me see. I think I can share specific window. I think it's this one. It might give me the same trouble it's giving you. Let's see. I tell you what, I'll do this. I'm going to do this a little hacky way, but this will work. So I'm just going to share a screenshot of our code. That way I don't have to restart the browser. Perfect. So this will kind of lay over our faces. But this is just a very basic snippet of code where you can see we have a cell that just a traditional cell, but instead of having a query at the top, we have a export const data on line 6. Toby, do you want to talk through some of the other pieces?
Yeah, first I want to say that this is we have changed this a little bit. It's not.
Okay.
It's now lowercase. It's, yeah, I mean it's a minor thing, but it's the lowercase data right now. It's not actually like uppercase letters are usually used for constants. Now it's an async function, so we decided to go lowercase for the data word. And here you can see it's async. So, and to really drive that point home, we added a 3-second delay here. But then, we can do things that are definitely not possible in a client-side component, and that's access the file system and read this words.txt file here. But other than that, it's very similar to your traditional traditional GraphQL cells. Whatever you return from your data fetching part of the cell, which is the data function here, which would have been a query in a traditional cell, automatically gets passed to your success component at the bottom there. So you can easily use it to render your data that you have gotten, in this case, from the text file in a traditional cell from a GraphQL query. And again, we do this to make it as simple as possible to take a traditional Redwood project and move it over to React Server components.
Yeah, I love this because it's like if you are familiar with Redwood, then a lot of the same patterns still apply. And Redwood is giving you all the React Server components goodness and juiciness and doing all that stuff for you. So you don't necessarily have to try and figure out the difficult pieces, which I think is just a testament to the entire team's a positive obsession with developer experience. Awesome. Well, thanks, Toby. We appreciate you explaining that. I know there were several people in the chat that were commenting on how helpful the React Server component tree structure and the diagram were, just to understanding how all of that works underneath. So thank you.
Yeah, well, I can also add to that like I want this to be able to bring my team members up to speed, but we do feel that this is something that will probably be useful for like almost everyone who starts developing an app with React Server components. So we will try to make, or actually we have already started adding support for that visualization into Redwood Studio. So in some future version of Studio, you should be able to have a live view of your own app render tree where you can easily see what components gets rendered on the server and on the client.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. And DT will actually be on a little later to talk about some of the Studio features that he's been working on.
Yep.
Sweet. So next up, I'm going to pull Peter. And Peter is very special to the Redwood team because he is a co-founder of Redwood. But he has gone on to create Snaplet and is going to give us a fantastic demo. I'm excited to see this on Snaplet. Thanks, Peter.
Hey, thanks, Amy. And thanks for the nice intro. I'm, as Amy suggested, well, didn't suggest, he mentioned, I'm the co-creator of RedwoodJS. And that feels like a lifetime ago. I'm now building a startup called Snaplet. Amy, I'm going to present my screen if that's okay. I think
that's totally fine.
To provide some context there. Sorry.
No, you're good. As soon as it shows up, I'll add it to the stream. There it is. Got it. Just have a little inception.
Okay. So I'm the founder of a startup called Snaplet, where we give you access to production-like data. You generally need access to production-like data when you're trying to build features or trying to write tests, and you want the tests to kind of like really represent what real life looks like. So Snaplet Seed gives you access to data in a programmatic way. So transport yourself into my shoes right now and pretend that you're a developer and you're working for a restaurant booking service. This is your database schema. Oops, sorry. This is your database schema. So a restaurant can set table availability. In other words, tomorrow night, there are 6 tables available with these many seats. And then a customer can make a reservation against one of those table availabilities. So the reason why I'm highlighting this schema is because there's a whole bunch of interlinked data entities. If you wanted to create a reservation, because these are non-nullable relationships, you have to create a customer, you have to create table availability, and you have to create a restaurant. So what we've done with Snaplet is we've given you a data client. I like to think of it as if Prisma and Faker got together and had a baby. So let me show you a quick demo of what that looks like. Let's just say I want to create some reservations. I've run npx snaplet generate. Snaplet has introspected my database and it's generated a TypeScript client that I can then use to insert data into my database. So you can see here, I've imported the client. Let me just delete that. It's from a previous demo. And now I want to create some data. So I'm going to say what I'd like is some reservations. And it takes an array. And I can provide an array and an object, and then I can provide some static data. So I can say the party size is 1. But I don't want to go and create row for row all the data in my database. So Snaplet allows me to use a method called times, or a callback method called times, where I'm going to create 10 rows. So I'm just going to run that and show you what the result looks like. So I'm running this NTS file, or this TypeScript file. And I've said, hey, Snaplet, please create 10 reservations for me. And this is what it has done. So if we look at the reservations table, you'll see that it's created 10 reservations. It's also created 10 customers and filled in their data. Snaplet, when it introspects your data, it also categorizes the labels. A label is your table name, your column name, and the data type. And we try to figure out what you would like to have the data be in your database. It also created 10 restaurants with addresses, and then also created the table availabilities. Now, you'll notice here that we have available seats, and we have these ranges. We have this data, these numbers that are just like crazy. There's no way that there could be 30,000 seats at a single table. So you can actually go ahead and modify your data model and say, for table availabilities, what I'd like to do is actually set a range of values using our copycat library. Copycat allows you to create deterministic values. What that means is for any given input, it always produces the exact same output. So no matter how many times you run this file, you'll always get the same values in your database. So I'm just going to set a range here, min 1, max 12. I'm going to go rerun that. And then what you'll get is data that's a little bit more representative of what restaurant data might look like. But this kind of sucks. Like, I actually have this data, this table availabilities data, this available seats data. It's in my database. The only thing is, like, me as a developer might not have access to that because it might contain private information. It might have, customers' email addresses and things like that. So Snaplet actually has a mode called fingerprint that someone with access to your production database can run. So what this fingerprint command does is it not only introspects your database schema, it also introspects your database data, and it creates a JSON file that has constraints in it. So you can see here what we've done is we've written this fingerprint file, and it's stored here in your repository that you can commit. Let me just format this document. And then what it did is it actually looked at the data in my database, and it created some constraints. So here we have like min year, max year for dates, and we have data for available seats. So I can also go and change this one over here. Table number bool. JSON. And in this way, not only do I have this ability to like make up data as I'm going along, but I also have access to the actual values in my production database. So what I haven't demoed here is that if you have a JSON column in your database, Fingerprint will also create type definitions for that JSON column and will also generate data for that JSON column. So at the end of the day, you have this programmatic interface that you can use either to seed your database or against tests, where you can literally create any shape of data that you need to do your job. And that's my really quick, simple demo of Snaplet Seed.
Thanks, Peter. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
I think for me, a huge aha moment was just in terms of security. Just the fact that you can allow developers to work with production-like data without compromising the integrity of your company and the security of it.
Totally. And, you know, a lot of us, I mean, we really do care about security. It's part of our job. But a lot of us are sometimes just walking around with actual production data on our computers, and that feels horrible. This is the best of both worlds. Sort of, you get access to data that looks really similar to production, but isn't it?
Yeah. As
Thanks,
a
Amy.
designer, one of the things that I heard early on was never, if you can help it, never design with lorem ipsum. And so one of the
Totally.
things that I've done is like tried to make things look real. So if I'm using a name, I'll stick Amy Dutton in there. Or if it's a title, I'll go to cnn.com and download the title or copy and paste it. And then just trying to experiment with different links of titles. And that gives you a better feel for it than lorem ipsum. So this almost feels like a similar solution for developers in the fact that your data is going to look like actual data and it's not just these made up things.
Totally. I mean, you can also consider, like, if you want to test pagination, or if you want to test performance and you want a lot of data, one of the ways of doing that is just writing your own script and generating it, but that's really not your job. So use a tool like Snaplet and it will just generate the data for you. And it will look very, very similar to what production might look like.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And that's super helpful. You're going to see things that you didn't see before. Yeah, I actually worked in Germany for 10 years. And there we often had like English interfaces and German interfaces. And German interfaces are like hilariously long. The words that they're able to make or come up with. So that's like also like one of those fundamental tests for UX. It's like, does it pass German localization?
Yes. I've had to do designs for different countries and things like that. So I totally understand that pain. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. That's great.
Thank you. I had fun.
Yeah. Next up, I'm going to bring up DT. He's been doing some awesome stuff with Studio and specifically OG image tags. And DT, if you need to share your screen as soon as it gets added, I'll add it to the stream as well. There we go. Perfect.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So what I'm going to talk about today is how Redwood with SSR, server-side rendering, can help you improve your SEO and your open graph tags that are used by social providers to do unfurling. So like when you go on Slack and you paste in the URL, or Twitter, you get some little descriptive information and an image and things like that. So if you recall, this is our Redwood blog. This is our old original test blog app, which I should now use Snaplet Seed to reseed the data, if you've been watching on our town hall. But this is our single page app, and this is our first blog post. And let's pretend that we are a bot or something. Oops. Because I can't type. Girl. Let's say we're Slack or Google bot or something that's trying to fetch that URL. So our first blog post. This is what we get back. You can see that we've got essentially the markup that's in an SPA, which means everything was client-side rendered. So there's no content in here. You don't see the title that we had, any of the meaning of life, any of this umami succulents, anything like that. And we don't have anything in our head that shows the title or the metadata description or an image or anything that's helpful to tell the provider out there that wants to show your for SEO or the image or the tag unfurling. So we can change to now use we can use SSR in Redwood, and let's just wait until that starts up. And what we're going to show is, let's see now how Redwood handles the same request when it pops up. Now that SSR is enabled. Okay, good. It's up and running and it's doing stuff. Oh, great. We got tons of stuff. Oh, great. We got rendered markup now. We've got things. Let's make this a little clearer. So, okay. Let's go to the top. Okay. Oh, I've got head data. Something got stuff. Okay. Let's see if I find Twitter. Okay, I've got a Twitter image. I've got a Twitter. I've got a Twitter. Okay. So I've got some tags now that the Twitter bot or whatever bot's doing will be able to recognize and help unfurl and create that little preview. We can take a look at post 2. It's going to do the same thing, and post 3 is also going to do the same thing. So that's great. We can now prove that that's actually doing something, and we can see in our app it's still working like we would normally. But this isn't all that fun to try to find. Did I have a Twitter card set? Did I just set my Twitter title? What was my image? I can't preview it, and you can see that I'm not showing an image here. So, like, is Twitter going to show an image when it goes and grabs the metadata for that? Well, we've got Studio to help. So now we're enabled. So now let's go do that same URL, that same blog post. And now we've got something that really helps. We've got a nice little preview, a generic one that shows some of the data, a preview of what it might look like on Discord, on Facebook, LinkedIn, Slack, and Twitter, because they're all a little bit different, and we're showing that different things, different providers can show different bits of data. And we're also doing an audit. So, oh, great, we're really happy. All the required tags that these providers want or need to make it look nice are provided. And we can see here, okay, here's the data. So instead of having to do that find and search, did I have a Twitter card set? Did I have a Twitter URL? Did I have what was my image URL? We've got a data preview that shows everything that's there. Awesome. But what happens if you are missing some information? Okay, generic is good, Discord is good. Oh, Twitter title. I missed the Twitter title in this one. So now we get an audit say Twitter won't really be able to preview this because you didn't provide a specific Twitter title. And you can see here, okay, the audit field for Twitter title is required. Okay, I better go fix that. And then we can take a look at blog post 3. And again, everything is looking nice and cheesy. And again, oh, this time Twitter card. So, oh, I missed the Twitter card data. So Twitter needs, or whatever it's called now, needs to say that there's a card information. Oh, it's a large summary card. That's just something Twitter needs to know in order how to render. Great. So now we've got the ability to preview information. We got an audit. We've got an ability to go. Now, how did we actually set this data? We set that data by going to our blog post cell, and we used the metadata tag in Redwood. This used to be called meta tags, but now it's called metadata, and you can describe the structure of all the Open Graph tags that you need to render things for your SEO and your social providers. So here's the traditional classic Open Graph tags: title, description, site name. If you have some article-specific information, you can do author, date, profile, and then here's your provider-specific Twitter cards. So in that case here, for blog post 3, I didn't have a summary card and that's why the validation failed. So that was the idea behind Open Graph Preview, that we could make a request to one of your blog posts. You don't have to do nrock or some tunneling and use some of the other card validation utilities out there, which are great. But in a nice development environment, you can quickly test out your URL. It won't get cached by the actual provider, so things will get stale. And we also have the ability to try with other custom user agents too, just in case the way the data comes back could be different for those providers. So that's our little demo for Open Graph Tag Preview with image previews and the way you can make your SEO and image unfurling much easier, and the DX test that with Redwood SSR and RedwoodJS Studio. That's everything. Thanks, Amy.
Awesome. Thanks, TT. You're getting a lot of love in the chat. So well done on this feature.
Thanks. I'm trying to find where I put you. Where are you? There you are.
Perfect.
Hello. Yeah. So so that's our first kind of developer, preview type tools, as Tobio mentioned. The other one that we want to figure out what are other ways Studio can help developers preview information, because it's hard to see what's going on under the covers. Open Graph tags is relatively easy. You can make a request and you can at least see it. But with React Server components, the trees, the flight information, so Studio will be that kind of go-to to help you work with these new technologies with Redwood.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Just wanted to thank everybody again for coming to the town hall. Again, I'm just going to highlight the working group. If you want to participate with the Redwood React Server Components working group, you'll get access to a Slack channel where we will kind of show you some of the stuff that we're doing and hopefully get your feedback. And if you're able to contribute, that's even better. So check that out. You can also use that bit.ly link. And thanks for attending our March town hall. We look forward to seeing you next month, but also just follow along on Twitter and sign up for the newsletter if you'd like to get updates between now and the next town hall. Thanks.